closing is coming. This is the last season in this 11th edition of Empoder Life. And we have the honor to have between us the prestigious Dr. Carlo Ratti. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you. Hi.
Carlo Ratti is architect, is engineer, is the director of the Senseable City Lab in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and according to some of his acquaintances, he's the new Leonardo da Vinci.
Who said that? No.
Later I will tell. According to the Wired magazine, he is one of the 50 people who is changing the world.
So don't trust media again.
That is written in Wired magazine. This is the meeting point of the people who want to change the world. So, welcome to your home,
Thank
Doctor.
You. Thank you. Well, first of all, great to be here with all of you, and really looking forward to the conversation. So don't believe all what he was saying, but let's use the time we have really to talk about some interesting things.
I'm very interested in talking about your book, your recent book, The Future of the Cities.
Yeah.
I am sure that the cities are the heart of this world we are inhabiting this century. And my first question is, this heart is healthy or is it insane?
Well, first of all, let me say this is like a big heart. And it's a big heart because just remember 4 numbers about cities. 2, 50, 75, and 80. So cities are only 2% of the crust of the planet, but they're 50%, around 50% of the population, a bit over 50% now. They're 75% of energy consumption, 80% of CO2 emissions. So if you just remember those 4 numbers, it means, if we can really do something to make our cities more sustainable, then the impact can be global, can be major. And so that's we can talk later about, what works, what doesn't work, but certainly it's a big heart, so it's something that is really crucial to how we run our planet.
You know that here in Spain, just weeks ago, we have an attentation in Barcelona, and there is a public debate about how we should change our cities in order to improve the safety. What do you think about it?
First of all, I was very sad when I was in Singapore when I read about that. Actually, it's a part of Barcelona I know very, very well. I've been there many times, so it was quite shocking what has happened. My impression is that we shouldn't change our cities, because changing our cities would be really succumbing to what the people who were behind it are trying to do. So basically to make the cities more closed. Cities from the beginning have been a place to share things. We didn't have cities once upon a time. Humanity didn't have cities 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago, if we had met here at Empoder Life at the time, we would all be hunter-gatherers. So there would be no cities, we would just move around in small groups. And then humanity, mankind discovers this amazing thing that by coming together, we can actually achieve more. We can come together, we can use cities to share things, to share ideas first, to share chromosomes, is much more effective in cities, to share many other things. So the city becomes a way to make sure that the total is more than the sum of the individual parts. And so the city is about openness. In the Middle Ages, one of the mottos were about the air of cities makes you free. And so I think what we shouldn't change is that. So even if, yes, we'll see issues, like we've seen in Barcelona and other places, but I think what we shouldn't do is, because of that, jeopardize the very reasons why cities exist. And so because that would be like having terrorism win over freedom, sharing of ideas, over the openness of cities.
Where did you think that the cities were born? When and where?
Well, cities, cities are born a few thousand years ago, really when humanity moves to start, when the first settlement starts. And they're born in next to Mesopotamia. The reasons for cities at the beginning are very interesting, because some of them are still there today. And I think, today we're talking a lot about how cities change. But at the beginning, cities have almost one of the reasons is also related to what remains. is, of course, what we were saying is about sharing ideas, about sharing chromosome and many other things. But it's also the city. The first city is actually emerged next to cemeteries, where you have a stone, and the stone is there when actually life is gone. And I think so there's a beautiful thing about cities. It's also a way, like an antidote to life. It's a way to live together, but also to have, to live close to a place that will keep on going, keep on living, even when life is gone.
I'm sure that the cities are very old, as you told, but they didn't were there forever, because when the fall of the Roman Empire, the cities nearly disappeared. What would be, or what was the consequences for the humanity in the disappearation of the cities? When the cities are gone, what do we have left?
It's actually a very interesting question, because what happens with the Roman Empire is actually that you have almost the first wave of globalization. And the time, this part of the world was part of the empire, like many other parts of, well, Spain. Hadrian is an emperor, was born, I think, not that far from here, if I'm not wrong. But anyway, I believe he was born in Spain. So anyway, so this was really part of a unified, very well connected, with a lot of roads system. And then with the fall of the empire, actually the road network breaks down, and you still have cities. But actually what happens is that you got segregation, you got separation, you got, well, some of the knowledge is preserved, especially monasteries, but actually certainly some of that kind of movement that you had during the Roman times, that disappears. And that's also why a lot of progress, I mean, it's a very interesting time in the Middle Ages, but a lot of progress for a few centuries is hampered just by the fact that, it's much more difficult to put people in touch. And that's really the thing look, guys, that's the reason why we're here today, is about, being in touch and talking to each other, and by talking to each other, that's how we can perhaps come up with an idea that, yes, that idea, not myself or anybody else, that idea might have an impact on the world.
In fact, you were born and you come from Italy, what was the capital of the Renaissance after the Middle Ages, and it was in the cities where the knowledge was recovered, and in some way, yeah. Italy is the father of the new cities in the world. Do you agree?
I don't know if you can say that. There's also a very Western view of the world. I think, we got amazing civilizations all over the world where cities flourish in very different ways. Think about, what happened in China. Think about what happened in the Americas, in South America. And so I think, there's different civilizations where cities have taken different forms. I think probably the only thing we can learn again from the Renaissance is again about openness and circulation of ideas. Florence in the 15th century, in the 16th century, was like a place where everybody would go through. And if you look at actually some of the people who were active at the time, if you think of anybody from Giotto and then later, Michelangelo and so on, they were moving from city to city. So that actually, this idea of sharing ideas, of moving from one place to another place, is what starts to happen again after the Middle Ages, when actually that was a bit more difficult after the fall of the empire.
In these last 5 centuries, which items do you think have been remarkable in the growing of the cities? Maybe trade, maybe religion, maybe knowledge, maybe science, industry, economy. What's your diagnostic?
I think that there's different variation of what you see from the beginning. And by the way, at the beginning, I was saying about mostly sharing ideas, sharing chromosomes. So of course, the city has a very important economic side, which is about sharing goods. So if you produce around here, you produce amazing things, olive oil or oranges, other things. Then you want the city as what is called in a research context is a central place. In central place theory just tells you that that's a place where what is produced around then it gets shared with others in the place, which is the city. And so certainly there's many layers of things we share in the city, including a lot of economic products and so on. That is, I think, that's what you see all across the past, is a different variation of this combination of, sharing ideas, people coming together, yes, to share. I think, the sharing, I would say, is what cities are about.
Anyway, after the industrial revolutions, many neighbors become owners. They start to own a flat, they start to own a car, they start to own many goods, and in some way, the cities started to feel full of goods, full of cars, and the quality of life started to get down. What's your diagnostic about this evolution?
Well, I'm not sure the quality of life. And by the way, guys, we said before we wouldn't, so I didn't know anything about these questions. So, and I think it's interesting because I never started, usually people ask me about, the city today and the city of the future. So I never started a conversation starting like 10,000 years ago. But I think it's
first time for anything.
It's quite fun. And then I think later with the interaction with all of you, maybe we can look at talk together about what are the crucial issues today. But to go back to your point, I don't think it's about that the issues start in cities because of too many goods. Cities always, from the beginning, is a place we were saying for sharing. They're a place that concentrate people and concentrate many things, goods and movement and so on. And because of that, then that creates naturally congestion. So I think you got a kind of a trade-off. You get a bigger city, and somehow you got a congestion on many things. Just many people or many bicycles, beautiful, like in Copenhagen. But then you got a jam with bicycles, or many horses. It used to happen until 100 years ago, and so on and so forth. So I think that has been. I think it's not necessarily about consumption. I wouldn't connect it to consumption. I would say it's more related to the fact that yes, just by the definition of a city as a magnet for sharing, then that magnet also creates some congestion. And that congestion, is what we don't like. It's about traffic jams we find every day, and so on and so forth. Now, however, because you mentioned consumption, I want to say something here, move a bit more to looking at tomorrow, and also looking at Bas' presentation before, about consumption, how we can reduce consumption. I think there's something quite interesting that's happening today. And the point is that if you think about consumption in the 20th century, well, consumption was a way to be conspicuous. The word of conspicuous consumption was coined by Thorstein Veblen, a sociologist, American sociologist of over 100 years ago. And when Veblen writes about conspicuous consumption, he looks at how we are using the things we consume in order to communicate status and communicate other things to the people around ourselves. And the basic thing is 30 years ago, I'm told, I wasn't there, but at MIT, that it was cool to get to MIT with a big flashy car. And a lot of students would actually get a big flashy car to get to school. Well, the interesting thing is that today we got a team at MIT of 40, 50 people, people between 20 and 35. And most people don't have a car, and most people don't have a driver's license. And it has been an incredible change. So they don't own it, and maybe they will take a bike, maybe they will use an Uber, maybe they will share something. And to me, what is happening that I think could have a very interesting consequence on the planet is that conspicuous consumption is still there. We still want to boast about things. And actually, there's more boasting than ever on Facebook, on Instagram, on many other tools. But the way it's happening is that for the first time, because you can actually share much better just a picture or something else, you don't need to have a physical object, but you can be conspicuous without consuming a physical thing, but just by sharing, say, an experience. So, you could just, post something that says something about you, about what you're eating, about what you're reading, about where you are with your friends, about something that's meaningful to you, and you can share it, but without doing it in such a way as in the 20th century that would use so much resources of the planet in order to produce goods. So instead of having the big flashy car, maybe you're boasting on Instagram about your Uber ride or your bike, but that still is moving from owning something to just being conspicuous about an experience. And that overall, if that is the case, we wrote an editorial with Richard Sennett that was published here in Spain, in El País, where this was a few months ago, and we tried to explore this. And there's some books now being written about this possible change. If that is the case, I think it's good news because we can perhaps be conspicuous, but in a way that's much more sustainable for our planet.
Probably you agree to Jeremy Rifkin and his Age of Access. It's a book with near 20 years ago, but I am not sure if it was possible to foresee the change from an ownership model to a sharing model. Did it surprise to you?
Well, you know, to me, if you just think about access, it's not just about access, because in some cases it's not about accessing the same thing just instead of owning the thing, but it's really about experiencing something that is meaningful to you. And to me, that is interesting. The first reason is what we were saying before, that you use less physical matter. So you use less raw materials, less energy. But the other thing why it's interesting is that if you think about the way of being conspicuous, before the Industrial Revolution, there was a connection between people and the thing you might want to show. So actually, if you were showing something, your clothes, they were usually made by you. If you think about how we were a few hundred years ago, and, you know, somehow the things that you were using were made by you or the local community. So it was a connection. And the connection is broken during the Industrial Revolution. So this connection, which is how something tells a story about you, is not related anymore to your own work. It's separated, it's segregated. And many people, including Richard Sennett, have wrote extensively about that and how conspicuous consumption has changed by breaking this link. And it seems to me that today, by being able to craft to use experiences to craft them and to share them, then we maybe come back to having more ownership of that and saying better, I mean, who we are and what we like about the city or about where we live or about our friends, basically to projecting better our value to others.
There still remains in the globe some tribal communities with traditional ways of life. Do you think we have some valuable knowledge to learn from them?
What are you referring to in particular?
I am thinking in Latin America. I am thinking in tribes in the mountains, in the lakes, with no ownership model.
In particular, about those tribes where there's no ownership,
yes.
You say. And you know, to be honest, I'm not an expert into this. I know about their existence. I know about many tribes. What I personally think is interesting is the variety of different models that humanity has developed over the centuries. So I think certainly, I would say there's certainly to learn from every other different model, including this one. And what we should do is somehow the world a few decades ago still had multipolar models where, you know, different ideas could be tried and some system would fail and restart. I think one of the things we want to avoid is actually to create just one single model of ownership of society. But we want to create pockets where we can develop, you know, new systems, new conditions, and experiment. We want to create something like in Copenhagen where you get Christiania, you know, some free zones where people can be crazy in their own way, can do what they are passionate about, and that becomes a way to increase diversity. Diversity in this case of different social way to structure society.
Beyond the change on values, we are living a change in the possibilities that technology allow us with the Internet of Things. I know you are an expert in this model of the cities based on Internet of Things. Could you tell us some examples how our cities are changing in that way?
Yeah, and so many people today talk about smart cities. You know, I really don't like the term smart cities. I think, you know, smart cities also makes it sound too much like a computer in open air, the city that is led by technology. Our lab at MIT is called Sensible Cities, more about trying to look at the human side of this. But what is behind a smart city or a sensible city is what you're saying, is about the IoT component, is about how digital and physical converging and I create a new hybrid space in between, you know, bits and atoms with us in the middle. So IoT is really what is powering all of this. And IoT is a reality today. If you think about anything from Uber to Airbnb to car sharing to many other things that are changing cities in different ways, well, this wouldn't be possible without IoT. So IoT is the enabler for this and is the enabler of many applications today, but will be the enabler of many more applications tomorrow. And, you know, if you want, we can talk about it.
Yes, I would like you to talk us about the intelligent lights, the LED lights, when they recorded sounds, and it allows new possibilities for safety or for efficiency. Could you tell us some examples in the world?
Yeah, I don't know. The one you mentioned, I'm not the one I'm most passionate about. I think, okay, you know, a street pole, the record sound. But I think let's look more about mobility. And if you look at mobility, we've seen, well, today a car is parked on average 5% of the time. Is used on average 5% of the time. 95% of the time is parked somewhere, and it's not only useless, not used, but it uses valuable space in our cities. It uses a parking spot somewhere in the city. And so if we change a little bit that, the impact could be major. And the reason why we're seeing with the sharing economy, we're seeing a lot of surge of car sharing. Again, car sharing wouldn't be possible if you didn't have a smartphone, real-time information about the car. So it's, again, an Internet of Things type of application. Well, because of this, you're seeing a big impact. And every car shared in a city, in Malaga, in Madrid, in New York, usually takes out between 10 and 30 cars from the street. Just because your personal car is used 5% of the time, and the share car is used much more. Different people use it, and so you can remove many, many cars. Now, if you look into the next years, what you see is that already today you've got self-driving cars. Technology is almost there. There's different levels 1 to 5. Like full automation 5 is still not there yet, but as you've seen, there's many trials around the world of companies testing self-driving cars, including with people inside, such as Uber with carrying people around with self-driving cars. When you go to self-driving car, it's interesting because then the car can give you a lift in the morning when you go to the office, and then can give a lift to somebody else in your family or to anybody else in the city. And what you're doing, you're creating a system between public and private, a new kind of transportation system. And if we play it right, that system can actually help us run our cities in a much more effective way. It can help us, remove a lot of parking spots, reuse a lot of parking spots from our cities, but also run our cities with much less cars than what we have today. That, of course, is if we use it, if we do it right. They can also go totally wrong. Technology can take us to heaven or hell, like all the time. But potentially, we can have a city which is much more sustainable, much less cars. Just get a lift when you need it. People don't need to own it, and you reuse a lot of parking spaces for other things. It can also become a nightmare in case we don't manage it well. The reason it can become a nightmare is they can become so cheap. Today in the United States, the cost per mile of an Uber is around around $2 per mile. And if you go to self-driving, the cost could actually go down to anything between 20 and 50 cents. And if that happens, it's cheaper than the subway, and everybody would want to take a car, and then it can get worse and worse. So again, technology can take us to a good solution, to a good condition or a bad condition. It depends on us, on the regulation, the policies we put in place. But theoretically, with mobility, there is a very interesting things happening, and that's why you see a lot of startups in this space. Not only the Teslas of the world, but a lot of people experimenting with new apps, with intelligent mobility, because there's going to be one of the exciting spaces of changing cities. And transportation is at the core of what we said at the beginning, actually how you bring people together.
Yesterday, we were speaking here in this chair with another person, Aral Balkan, who told us about the risk when the cities gather our data, and some companies in Silicon Valley make money with our data, driving us to a lack of privacy, to a lack of freedom. And he was very warning about it. What's your feelings about it?
I totally agree.
Totally agree.
Totally agree. I think it is a big risk, and it's a risk actually that we should all be aware of this and take part in this discussion. I think most of you have a smartphone in this room. And if you have a smartphone, your position has been collected most likely by the person who's running your iOS. They have a few thousand data points about your life today, about where you've been, about what you were doing, about if you were moving, walking, cycling, running, what you do. And that information, today's information, only goes onto a few servers, and is not only is not shared, but actually is used as a bargaining tool between different companies. It's creating monopolies of companies that are making more and more money because they got this information about billions of people. And then when you got this information, you can more easily sell advertising. That's what Facebook does, and so on. So I think that's the world we're in today. And I think we should all be aware of this. There's very big issues. Who has access to it? I mean, how should it be shared? Who should use it? Who has the right to use it? Do we want to create a world where you create big monopolies based on data, or do you want to create a world where actually the competition is not on data, it's actually on the intelligence that you use on it? And I think to me that's a much better idea, that basically data is not about who owns more data, it's about how you can develop more intelligent ways to understand the data. And those questions, I think you should all we should all be very aware. We've done a couple of conferences at MIT called Engaging Data to look at this with the Obama administration, with privacy advocates and academics and so on. But I think it's a very crucial issue, and the society we're going to build tomorrow is going to depend on the decisions we make here today.
Most of the brands we are talking and we have in mind in this revolution and change, like Uber, like Tesla, like Google or Facebook, are USA marks. Is there any hope for Europe to recover the leadership for the future?
Yeah, I think so. But let's also ask, what do you think?
I think we can introduce
let's say yes
questions.
Or no. Let's say yes, raise your hand.
Who think Europe is the future of the innovation?
Come on, guys.
Not more 10% people. Okay. Are we losing this battle?
Well, I think the reason I was asking this is because I think the only way you can do innovation is if you believe you can do it. Because you need to bump into wall, and that's why it's important. The question is, just if you believe you can do it. I think there's no reason why innovation shouldn't happen here. And I think, to me, I'll give you just my impression by looking at things on both sides of the Atlantic, is that things are changing. And let me give you one example. The example is a few decades ago, France decided to replicate Silicon Valley in France. And they picked a beautiful place next to Cannes. It's called Sophia Antipolis. And in a very French way, I actually love France. I spent a lot of time there. But it's usually very top-down. But it's in a very top-down French way. They decided, OK, we are going to create a new Silicon Valley. And we're going to do a new city. It's a beautiful place next to Cannes, great wine, great weather. Feels like California. Actually, in Cannes, there's a place called California it's part of Cannes. So no, they create the best site. They do this, and a few decades ago. And of course, Silicon Valley doesn't happen. Because it doesn't happen if the government says we're going to build a city and call it and turn it into Silicon Valley. It's a good place. There's a few research centers, academics, and big companies, but it's not innovation Silicon Valley. And because of this, many people tried to replicate the model of Boston or Silicon Valley, but with little success. Today, over the past 5 years, I think things have been changing. And for the first time, we've seen something like Silicon Roundabout in London totally changing the way, the UK capital and the innovation dynamics in the UK capital. We've seen what has happened and is happening in Berlin. We've seen what's happening in Paris, where now there's one of the biggest, largest incubator in Europe, the one supported by Xavier Niel. And so things are changing. And to me, things are changing because ideas move faster. Capital moves faster. I think the story we heard before is very nice. It's about, you got an idea, you got a dream, you put it online, and then millions of people, or tens of thousands of people, millions of people hear about it, and tens of thousands of people give you money. And you say, shit, now I need to do it. But I think you couldn't do that before. The network allows you to get capital and bring together things in a way you couldn't. And if you want to do that, it doesn't matter. You can be in Amsterdam, in San Francisco, in Mumbai, in Rio de Janeiro. It really doesn't matter much if you got the same idea, you can implement it. So because of that, I think things are changing, and so to me, there is hope. But in order to have hope, I think each of you who didn't raise your hand before has to start raising it, because this will only happen. It is feasible now, more feasible than before, because of this connectivity. Again, perhaps is related to where we started 10,000 years ago. It's about sharing of ideas faster, of coming together in an easier way, thanks to digital. But I think if you don't believe it, it will not happen.
I know, Carlo, that more than be a professor and an architect, you have enough time to make your own invents. You have some patents, and I read about the Copenhagen wheel. What's the Copenhagen wheel
The Copenhagen wheel is actually a story that's a little bit similar to one we heard before. And it's a story where we started doing a project with Copenhagen, and we were working with the mayor of Copenhagen to look at traffic in the city. And the interesting thing, as I was mentioning before, is that in Copenhagen, traffic means a lot of bicycles. So in Copenhagen, between 30 to 50% of all trips every day actually happen by bicycle, which is quite an amazing thing. It means, got a healthy population, you got less pollution, you use less space on roads, and so on. So we were thinking about that, and started thinking about, what could be, is there anything that could be done to the biking experience? And if you think about what happened in the 20th century, at the beginning of the 20th century, many cities were really moving, in the middle of the 20th century, many cities were moving with bicycles. But then what happens is the cities become very large, and so it becomes difficult. Today, if you go to Beijing, Beijing is a city where if you go from the center, Wangfujing, to, if you go just to the north part where the stadium is, you got 20, 30 kilometers in order to go there. And you cannot do that every day if you need to commute. In the other parts of the city, if you go from one side to the other in Beijing, you could do 100 kilometers a day. You cannot bike for that. And so we were thinking, is there any way that we can actually increase the range? And you can do it today with e-bikes. But can you do it by retrofitting your e-bike into an e-bike? And so we designed this kind of wheel that you can fit on any bike. And then as you retrofit it, every bike, your own bike, the bike maybe your grandmother's bike, the bike you really like, turns into an e-bike. Well, we did that. First, it was like a prototype, and we put it online, and it went viral. And then at that point, MIT filed a patent that we licensed from MIT. So that happens at the standard thing that happens at the university, not our decision. And then we did a startup. And we had a similar experience. We put it online, not on a crowdfunding platform, but then we had a lot of people who started ordering the wheel. And the wheel is now being shipped. And now we'll see how this, it just started a few months ago, the shipment. And we'll see where it goes. But so far, it has been an amazing experience of turning something that was an idea at the beginning on a piece of paper into the first prototype, into what is the team. I'm not part of the team. Is Asaf Biderman, who's running the company, who we've been working together at the lab for many years. So into the company and the product, and now into what is changing. If you look online, for me, the most rewarding thing is if you look online on Facebook, some of the people who say, well, no, I'm not using my car anymore. I love it. I don't need now, it changed my life because I can cycle where I couldn't before, and I don't need to use so much motorized transportation anymore. So I think, that's a little story that's similar to the previous one.
Interesting. One more question. If you only could choose one city in the world for your kids to grow up, which city will it be?
Which city would you pick?
Copenhagen may be one of them.
Copenhagen? Well, I'll tell you. There's a great French writer called Georges Perec, and Georges Perec tried to answer in one of his books. He wrote a beautiful book called Espèces d'Espace, Species of Spaces. In the book, he thinks about what is the ideal place for being in Paris. And he said, well, the ideal apartment in Paris is an apartment that has my living room next to the Parc Monceau, or I think it was the bedroom next to the park, and then the kitchen next to the market, and every part of the apartment in a different neighborhood of Paris. And then to your answer, I think the best or the ideal city, I think, should be something that maybe has the weather of Malaga and the topography of Prague, the fusion cooking of San Francisco, the nightlife of Rio de Janeiro. I mean, you name it. But I think it's probably what we want to have is something that combines some of the amazing things that different cities are exploring all across the planet.
You should also know the nightlife in Malaga. Okay. I propose you to do that.
But it shouldn't be. But it shouldn't be it could be the nightlife in Malaga, but it shouldn't be like the weather of London and this thing about what is paradise and hell. So I think it should be the kind of the most amazing things from cities around the world.
Of course, we have only 10 minutes left, so it's the time for the participation for the public. It's your time. Please, your questions to Dr. Carlo Ratti. We have two. Jan? Jan the first. We need the micro for the streaming because thousands of people is watching us in the streaming. at least.
So thanks a lot for your presentation. I wonder, when we talk about cities and the internet, in a certain way, we're building a new city online, which is the internet. So we have public spaces in the cities, which is gathering points. We have streets, we have cars, mobility, whatever. In reality, we find the same stuff online. So public commons, spaces where we can access, and a lot of clubs, like Facebooks, like LinkedIn, whatever social network you have. What is your idea? Is it already perfect, our city, online internet city? Would you agree that this is part of building up a new city style?
I think I like your idea of saying it's about building a new city, but I would say it doesn't substitute, at least for now, the real one. And I think, people at the beginning of the internet thought that that would be the case. In the 1990s, people thought, okay, why do we need cities? We can just do everything online. And no prediction could have been more wrong than that one. And I think today, the fact that we are here today physically is just, another example of the fact that really by being online, by being physically present is a different thing. And when you go outside and you move in the beautiful little roads of Malaga and you go to the cathedral and all of that, that's not the, that's what we are wired about. Now, I don't know, I cannot tell you if maybe in a few decades we'll be able to take that, also that physical experience and virtualize it so that, yes, you could actually bring that onto the digital space. But I can tell you that, to me today, I think what we are doing here and what we're doing out there, it's impossible to replicate in the digital space. And so the digital space can help us, can create a new city, can help us, amazing things. I think the most incredible thing is how we can now reach knowledge, all of humanity's knowledge at our fingertips. That wasn't the case for thousands of years. Human development, where it was very difficult just to go and find the book you wanted, the article you were looking for, the reference you were looking for. So those things are amazing, but I think still they're no substitute yet to the richness and the amazement and the colors and the smell and the excitement when we are together here or in the streets outside.
Okay, next question.
Buenos días. Muchísimas gracias por la conferencia. Me llamó mucho la atención, bueno, me ha gustado mucho todo, pero en particular un concepto, ¿no?
I will translate to him.
No, I can understand.
Congrats, congrats.
Yes?
Yeah, we say in Italian that Spanish is an Italian dialect.
Yes.
So
Continue
Okay.
with your dialect, please.
Ok. El término ciudades sensibles. Málaga está catalogada como una Smart City. Y yo muchas veces discuto con mis compañeros porque cuando veo el ranking de ciudades de Smart City y veo las variables que definen esa Smart City, la mayoría son, bueno, temas de movilidad, pero asociados a tecnología, a, yo que sé, a conexión de internet, a puntos de reciclaje, pero notaba que faltaba ese ranking de sensibilidad, ¿no? De qué hace una ciudad más sensible que otra. Entonces, ¿qué le podemos contar, por ejemplo, a esta ciudad como Málaga? Que salgamos un poco de ese término de Smart City, asociado a la tecnología y nos convertamos realmente en una sociedad sensible, ¿no?
Thanks for asking it. And I would say, I don't think there's a general recipe, but the key thing is actually starting from people, not starting from technology. I think too many times people think smart city, okay, great, we just take a bunch of technology. In many cases also we've seen cases in which each proprietary technology by big companies, just buying it in bulk and throwing it onto the city. I think that's not really the solution. I think the question we want to do is always ask what type of things you are solving. And when you're asking that question, then in many cases, I think that the best solution is actually to let people take action. And if you look at a lot of the things happening around the world about hacking the city, about new apps being developed, or also about startups, what you see, we said before things such as Uber and so on, there's plenty of them, similar things working in the space of mobility. They're growing up all around the world. So to me, it seems that the most important thing is really, instead of thinking about starting from the technology point of view and say which technology I'm dropping on the city in a top-down way, is more think about bottom-up, about how can I enable people to develop the things that could be most life changers for them. So, and I think that's what I would recommend to every mayor or regional government leader or national government leader about how to enable others to take action in order to transform many, many aspects of our lives. The reason it's difficult to talk about smart cities also is that because you're looking at anything that goes from, say, mobility to how you can access, connect better with the public administration, so you can have, sensing of the urban environment. So there's so many dynamics. And so what you want to do is mostly enable people to look at whether the things are more dear to them, more important for them, and take action.
Time for new indicators then. One more question?
Sí. Quería preguntarle en relación a si tenemos en cuenta las capacidades cognitivas y la evolución que supone en las personas la modificación de esas capacidades por el envejecimiento, ¿evolucionan las ciudades o se cambian las ciudades para adaptarse a ese proceso natural?
Let me see if I understand exactly. So you're saying, can we do cities more for the elderly as we look at how age is changing? Is that?
I didn't understand too.
I didn't understand.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
Exactamente, sí, esa es la pregunta.
Yes?
Sí, esa es la pregunta.
The older people.
Yeah. Okay, now understanding, I think it's a very important question, especially in many countries, especially if you think about Europe, Japan, many other countries where actually the aging of the population is very present. What to me is interesting, I'll tell you, I don't have a global solution, but what I'll tell you is interesting is that today we can use some of the new technologies we're talking about, the Internet of Things technologies, we can use them in order to to make people independent longer. And so what maybe a few years ago you couldn't live on your own anymore, it was too risky, even at home, you can actually bring sensing and the ability to monitor your health in real time in order to give you more independence. And to me, that's one of the interesting things. Many people are working in this space. At MIT, there's a group called the Age Lab that looks a lot of that. But basically, it's how, if you want to see it in other ways, in the old days, at one point, you wouldn't be independent anymore, it would be too risky, and then you need to go to a nursing home, you need to go to a hospital. Now, the question to me is tomorrow, can you actually develop a society where you can be much more independent much longer, and then you got remote monitoring, you got support system in order to basically take some of that ability to protect you, to take it to your home. So you can stay there and keep on living the city. To take it to your home, to take it to the city, so you keep on living in a normal way, but just you use technology in order to make this safer for you. So I think that seems to me the interesting challenge. Many people are working on it, but it's certainly, there's still a lot of space for innovation.
More questions?
È più difficile capire qualche dialetto italiano che spagnolo. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I share your idea of auto-regulation of the cities, and that IoT and communication system will improve our experiences, but they are also bringing many conflicts in the city. I think you are aware about Barcelona, and probably very soon also Malaga, Seville will have the same problems. Because all these things, all this stuff is in the hand of big companies. There is no regulation from authorities or maybe from the same citizens. I don't know what's your idea about how to regulate the city against these problems, if it should be more from local governments or the state or from the same citizens.
But I don't know from your question if the city is the problem or the solution. And because you say, yes, there is conflict in the city, but that's natural, because we were saying before, the city brings together many different people. The city is a place for sharing. When you're sharing, you go sharing different ideas. Sometimes the ideas are different, and then you can create conflict. But I'm not sure if the cities actually might be the solution, and I'll just give you this example, which is if you look at a map of who voted Republican and who voted Democrat in the United States in the past election, Now, I don't know, maybe there's some Trump supporters in the room, so raise your hands. Before I say something, no, it's interesting because I've made a few bad jokes about Donald Trump when I was traveling in Europe. And a couple of times at the end, somebody came to me. There were Trump supporters hidden in the, saying, "Oh, well, he's the great," and they came and started harassing me. So now I'm a bit more careful before I say something. But if you look at that map, and you can just find it online everywhere, you see the map is usually red and blue. And red are all the places across the United States that voted for Donald Trump or Republican, and blue are the Democrats. And well, if you look at the map, you look at that map is where all the blue spots are usually cities. And if you look, there's a nice diagram, there's a graph that we did at the lab, and the same graph was in the Economist. They look at the size of cities and who voted Republican, who voted Democrat. In the bigger the city, you see a clear line, so basically the bigger the city, the more people voted Democrat. Now, again, I'm not making a generalization here, but certainly at the past election, certainly in the past election, it was a battle between openness and closeness. And so that's why I'm saying I don't know if the cities actually could be a solution, because the city, if you look at that, is the place where actually, yes, maybe there's conflict, but because there is conflict, people are much more aware of differences, are much more tolerant, and are able to engage with others. While the other places, at least if you look at the past election, were the places where the message of let's build the wall, let's kick out the let's go back to a much more close society resonated outside of the city. So again, I don't want to generalize between Republicans and Democrats, but I think if you look at this in the past election, the city might be the solution, the place where actually tolerance is born out of the conflict you were mentioning.
Only a few more questions. Last chance. Yolanda?
Yeah.
Sí, no. Bueno, lo primero, muchísimas gracias, Carlos, por estar aquí. Sé que ha costado mucho encontrar estas horas y aún así lo has hecho con muchas ganas, que ha venido hasta Granada porque no tenía vuelo directo, que ayer tenía que estar en Milán, y quiero que todos seáis conscientes de que gente tan grande, pues su tiempo y aún así lo regala y está aquí con nosotros para compartir estas ideas tan grandes. Quitado esto, decirte que el lema de este año de Empodera, Making by Hacking, está inspirado en todo el trabajo que estáis haciendo, el tema de hackear las ciudades. Cuando intentaba buscar un concepto que aunara a todos los ponentes que estáis aquí, que habéis estado durante el evento, nos quisimos fijar en tu trabajo y un poco en el lema de Making by Doing, Learning by Doing, aprender haciendo. Y dijimos, bueno, es que la gente que está aquí no aprende haciendo, hace cosas hackeando lo establecido y poniendo al ciudadano en el centro, que tenéis en común eso, y la sostenibilidad, la ética, la transparencia y demás. Entonces yo me he quedado con ganas, aquí todo, me he quedado con ganas de bueno, que tenéis eso en común, de que no solo hacéis cosas, sino el cómo lo hacéis. Y cuando hablas del Senseable City, yo me imagino eso, todo un equipo dentro de mí trabajando, centrado en las personas, y trabajáis muy diferentes áreas, que desde la biología, la antropología, la sociología, la tecnología. Entonces me gustaría que nos contaras un poquito más del cómo, o sea, tú y todo tu equipo, el cómo, porque me parece fascinante y me gustaría que parte del público lo pudiera también visionar. Por supuesto, ya has puesto el ejemplo de la rueda de Copenhague, que es muy bueno, pero creo que tienes más que contar ahí y no me quiero quedar con las ganas.
How is your day today?
Yeah, no, and I'm going to answer your question. First of all, let me say thanks all for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here with you today. By the way, I enjoyed very much some of the morning when I was here. And also, you know, I was really looking forward to this. I've been here, I think, 15 years ago when I went hiking on the Sierra, one of the Sierras nearby. Yes. And you know, I love the city, and I hadn't been since then. So even if it's a short trip, thanks a lot for having me here. Really, really grateful for that. For your question about how do we do it, I don't think there's a general recipe, but I'll tell you a couple of things about how things happen in the lab. The first thing is about collaboration. And so think about the group almost as a small city. The same thing that happens in the city with different ideas coming together. We try to really have a lot of diversity in the team. We got people from all over the world, from every single continent, people with many different backgrounds, with many different educations. So I think that is very important, because that's when actually you can combine different points of view and you can come up with new ideas. So that's the first thing. And ideas, again, going back to the beginning, ideas are today, I think they're always collaborative. There's something you develop in a group. They're not anymore the idea of a few hundred years ago that somebody just wakes up and has this revolutionary thought. It's really about how together we can come up with some interesting solution to challenges. And then the second thing, I would say, is if you look at this space of the sensible city, what you have is you got the technology side. We said before it shouldn't be the beginning. It should be an enabler, but not the beginning. Then, of course, you got the crucial thing, which is people. As you said it in Spanish, Ciudadanos en el centro, or something like that. So being basically you got that side, and that, if you look at that from research, is the social sciences. And then you got clearly the city, the physical city, which is what architects, designers, planners have been dealing with. And so if you want to think, what you see is the convergence of three different group of disciplines, the disciplines that deal with space, so I think, again, design, planning, and so on, the disciplines that deal with people, with society, the social sciences, and the disciplines that, in this case, deal with technology. But also, we got people with backgrounds also in physics, in complex science, could look at that component, for instance, of big data, of analyzing the city in a way that's more quantitative. And then somehow we try in every project, there's the three components come together in different ways. Sometimes one is bigger, but still you need to have all those three components. If you miss one of them, then I think usually you're missing a crucial component. You cannot miss, at the core of it should be the people, as you were saying. You really need to have this integration, and that's the second thing we've learned at the lab at MIT.
No more question?
One more.
Very, very short, please.
I think we have a problem today with our cities that they are growing very big, and this is why we have to solve problems like mobility and so on. I'm not sure if you ask people living in city today if they would prefer to live in city or in small places. I guess most people come to city. Of course, it's a place where we exchange ideas, but most people come to city because it's a place where they find work. Finding a job is the most.
Sorry, what works?
Finding a job.
Okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that have to come to the city because there is a place where you can find a job. But this makes that our city do not breathe anymore. And the main problem is that we see in many cities today is isolation. A lot of people are living isolated. They don't have social connection. So is it something that you are doing also, that you are working on, looking at how you can create social connection between people?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. It's a point that also is related to some of the, let me tell you what this reminds me as well, which is, a lot of the work, the studies that are going on today about the fact, okay, now you can take your laptop and go and work at Starbucks. So you can work in a cafe. So that on the one, you can look at this both as the half-empty glass, which is, or half-full glass. I think if it is half-full, it means, yes, instead of being in a cubicle in your office, you can go there and be close to other people, like in a beautiful social space. On the other hand, you got the kind of privatization of social space, where you go there and, you go to a cafe, and basically you got like a large number of people who don't talk to each other, and just, everybody's closed in a bubble and just communicating via email or Facebook or whatever with other people far away. Now, I still think that there is a value in still that proximity, because then you can get more sparkles of interaction, even if if even this kind of half full or half empty glass, something we could debate, could become the topic of the next conversation. But I think still, to me, at least trying to be optimistic, I see, the value of getting out of the cubicle where we've been living for a long time, and actually still enjoying a space where potentially we can have more sparkles. And yes, even if those sparkles might be hampered sometime by the fact that somebody is just looking at their smartphone, it's still, there's a higher chance of serendipity than the one you had in your cubicle, totally isolated from everybody else. So I think somehow we are talking about, if your question can be answered in many ways, but we are talking, I think, about physical isolation, physical segregation, or digital isolation and segregation, and how the two play together. Well, I still think that still, if you're in a space which is more sociable, even if digital sometimes might segregate us, you got still the opportunity to look at each other, to smile to each other, that we wouldn't have in the old days when actually there was also physical segregation, for instance, in the way of working inside cubicles.
So now we have to end. In the name of all these people who want to change the world, I dare to say you that it was a privilege to share with you. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure for me,
Thank you very much,
for me
Dr.
to be here with you. Thanks.